Good evening. Boy, I'm going to stand back here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you here tonight. I hope you got plenty of taco salad and nachos and good stuff to eat, but not so much that you fall asleep. Really? Y'all gonna? Thank you, Noah, for just giving me a little head nod on that one. I really appreciate that. Oh, yeah, he's already there. This can be a tough room, Matt. This can be a tough room. Hey, thanks for coming tonight. And it's a little different than our usual stuff we do on Wednesday nights, but it's appropriate, and especially given what our friends and family and folks we know in Florida are going through right now. As a former Floridian, man, this is a tough time. My mother-in-law, in fact, I noticed it on Facebook just a minute ago. She lives in North Orlando, and they've already lost power at their house, and the storm's not even close to there yet. So it's going to be a big deal. Being prepared for bad stuff is a really, really good idea. And so we don't get hurricanes that last a couple of days, but we get little hurricanes that last just a little while and send your house to Kansas. So you need to be ready for the things that can come your way. So Matt Hitchcock with American Red Cross is here to talk about that for us. I mentioned this on Sunday. We are a Red Cross disaster facility. If there's a problem in the area, we're someone they can call on here at Town and Country to open our facility. And he's at the end of the presentation, he's going to tell you about some things that any of us can do to facilitate that. So I hope you'll give that some attention. So let's take a minute and pray together as we get ready to hear this, and then turn it over to Matt. God, thank you for your love and your grace, for your mercy. Thank you for everything that you put in our lives. God, thank you for this opportunity to learn how to just be prepared and make us willing hands to help those who are in need. Bless our friends, family, all those folks in Florida who are being so dramatically impacted, even in these moments, by the hurricane. God, thank you for hearing us and loving us. In Christ's name, amen. Matt, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Pastor. All right, so like you said, my name is Matt Hitchcock. I'm with the American Red Cross. I'm actually one of the 2 paid staff across 26 counties. So whenever you hear a statistic that says the Red Cross is about 90 to 93% volunteer, it's absolutely correct. Most of the people that you will see in Florida are volunteers. They have gone through countless hours of training. They have actually deployed themselves, and they've gone down to Harvey, to Irma. You guys remember the hurricanes down in Texas and Houston and in Florida, Puerto Rico. A lot of those volunteers, this is probably their 4th, 5th, 7th deployment going down there. And on that note with hurricane, just so you guys are curious, Red Cross is already down there. We've already got about 400 people deployed. I think she was asking me, do we have people down there? We have 400 people stationed all around the north part of Florida and Georgia, and they're just waiting. They're waiting for the go-ahead to be able to go in, because we don't like to go in and start inundating everybody with all the different information, all the different stuff. But the second that we get the go-ahead, we go in, we open up shelters, we have pre-planned areas, we've got shelter trailers that we bring in. We start bringing in the emergency response vehicles that actually provide feeding about 14 hours a day. So just a lot of things that we've got pre-staged and ready to go. And he's right. We found out earlier today there's about 200,000 people without power, and that was even before the hurricane actually even touched the coast. It's kind of crazy, but they did that to help kind of save some of the power grid. For when it does happen, it's actually less damage to the power grid overall. So I know there's a lot of PSO workers that have gone down there. Those guys are amazing. So be praying for them as well. But Red Cross, who can tell me something that, besides going to disasters, what do you guys think about Red Cross? When you think Red Cross, what's something associated with it? Right here. CPR, absolutely. What else? Blood drives, yes. We want your blood, always. What else? Yeah. Yep. What else? I saw a hand back there. Oh, okay. Yeah, so those are definitely our bread and butter. Disaster response, blood drives, CPR, personal health and safety is what we call it. CPR, we do We can do licensed certified CPR. We can also do just basic hands-only CPR. One thing else that we do, a lot of people it depends on who you talk to, we also do a lot of work with veterans and with deployed military members. We call it service to the armed forces. A couple different things that we do with that is that we'll do military entrance processing calls. So this is like when the people first they say they're pledged, they're part of the Army, part of the Navy, Marines, whatever the line of service is. We will actually get their information, and then we'll actually take it and we'll call their family and let them know of the different services that Red Cross offers them. We offer them resiliency training. We offer them different calls. Just like if they're ever struggling, it's like you can call our counseling centers. But one thing that's really, really neat, and I love to tell the story, is we are one of the fastest ways to get a hold of a loved one overseas. We had a lady come in, and she's like, hey, I just want to drop off this check because you guys really helped our family out. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. It was a check for like $15,000. It was really amazing. And we're like, well, what did we do? And she goes, well, my son was overseas in the Army. Nothing against the Army. But she had tried calling through the normal channels. They flat out told her that her son wasn't in the Army. And she's like, yeah, he's in the Army. I know he is. Well, it's not the right Social Security number. I gave birth to him. I know what his Social Security number is. And so this went round and round and round. She finally was like, okay, I give up. She called the Red Cross. Within about an hour and a half, they had where he was, his commanding officer, and had already put in the request that he be able to come home because I think it was his father or a brother was really, really sick and in the hospital. And I think within 24 hours, he was able to come home. And so he was actually able to be there, be by his father's side, and be there for that. So she was just absolutely blown away that this could actually happen. So that's one of the really cool services that Red Cross also does. We have a whole staff dedicated just to veterans, to deployed family members, or deployed and the family members of those who deployed. But our overall arching mission is that we want to help to alleviate suffering, wherever that is. And we do that through the power of volunteers and then the generosity of donors. So two things. We need people, and obviously we need the money to send those people out. I think right now I said we've got about 400 deployed, and I think we've spent just over $1 million already, and this is across the nation, just getting those people to the area. This operation, and includes the finances that we do give out to the people while we're down there, is going to cost well over $10, $20 million just to do this. And they are forecasting that potentially, at least, I'm not sure if this, of course, forecasting changes daily, up to the minute sometimes. At one point, they were saying that this could be the storm of the century, just given the fact that the population has grown so much that fewer and fewer people are actually evacuating. The storm could actually impact more people than Irma did, so it could potentially be a pretty catastrophic storm. But we're there, and we are absolutely going to need volunteers, and I can tell you more about that at the very end as to how you can help here. And then if you do want to learn what it's like and how to get down to the bigger disasters, I will absolutely gladly talk with you about that as well. So our first slide we're going to go into, tonight we're going to talk about preparedness, as Pastor Lanny said. We're going to talk about, and if my computer would wake up, let's see, I get to talk. I used to be a youth pastor, so I'm not going to say anything about Pastor Lanny, but I know what it's like. I can just keep rambling on and on and on. So, let's see. All right. So, being prepared. First thing you need to know about disasters is that they happen often, they can happen with little or no warning, and they can happen anywhere at any time. Every year, communities across the United States, they face these disasters. We're seeing one right now down in Florida. Also in Puerto Rico, you have the hurricane that hit there, Hurricane Fiona, I believe. And then you also have the typhoon up in Alaska that hit up there. We also have thousands and thousands of acres that are being burned in California. And sometimes people will ask me, well, why do the California wildfires get a lot more attention? Whereas, western Oklahoma, we can burn 40,000 acres or even more at the drop of a hat and nobody even bats an eye. Well, it's mainly because of population. It's because more and more people are concentrated within California, and I think we've already seen about 4 or 5 deaths with the wildfires out there. So that's kind of why. But those are absolutely just disasters that impact everybody. I had this on me too. I keep forgetting about this little thing. There we go. I was looking back there at you guys, and he's like, I gave you that little switch thing. All right. I'll get there. Pastor Laney's got faith, so I'll get there. So which hazards do we face? So of these lists right here, think about for Oklahoma, what are some big ones that we face here? Just shout them out. I like to interact, so go ahead and shout them out. Yeah, that's the big one for Oklahoma. What else? Volcanoes. You must live near Arkansas. Yep. Yes. So yes to all of them except volcano. I heard that back there. You were hanging out with Charles Lewis too much. Tell him I said that. Flooding, yes. Now, what's really crazy is, so flooding, but also we're starting to see more in Oklahoma, flooding related directly to hurricanes. So especially we saw that with Harvey, we saw that with Irma. As they finished out their destruction in Texas, that storm moved up into our area, and we saw a ton of flooding all along the eastern half of Oklahoma. So just kind of be aware of that as well. If you have family or friends that live over in the Grove area or Tahlequah area, we're seeing more and more flooding over there. All right, let's see here. Same thing right there. So this is something that's pretty kind of blunt statement, but it is very true. It's up to you to be ready. Do not count on someone there to be there to help. Now, why is that? When disasters first hit, our main first line of help and resources, like first responders, disaster organizations, government agencies, hospital emergency rooms, they're going to try and do their best, but they are staffed for normal daily operations. They are rarely ever staffed for an emergent disaster need. So this is why it's really important to start thinking about preparedness. And here in a little bit, I'm actually going to pass out all the stuff that we talked about tonight is going to be on a sheet. So I'm going to fly through this kind of quickly, but everything that we talk about is going to be on this sheet, and it'll give you tons of ideas as to what to put into your preparedness plan. So the truth is, we all have to depend on ourselves or our family members first, because think about it. With the flood, roads may be impassable. Utilities may be unavailable. We're seeing that now down in Florida. Hospitals and first responders could be overwhelmed. That's just something that's absolutely true, because if they all of a sudden start getting 100 calls, it's going to have to be first come, first basis. I remember at one point in Harvey, they basically said, unless you're stopped breathing, we cannot make it to you. So banks, grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies, schools, workplaces may be closed for days. So it's definitely up to you and your household members to figure out your plan in advance. Just don't count on receiving help right away. But the good news is that each of us can prepare ourselves in our households for any disaster. All of us should be prepared to help ourselves and those around us. Will your preparation be perfect? What do you think? No, it will not. Will preparation make things super quick, easy, and painless? No, it won't. But I can tell you that planning and preparation is the key to you being safe and recovering quickly. The better prepared a community is, the more resilient they are in how they recover. So here's a question for you all. What does it mean to be prepared? You pretty much read my notes exactly. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, but so you're dead on. So basically, and what we teach little kids when we do our youth preparedness programs, we teach them simply being prepared means being ready. Being ready. So, regardless of the responses of what you may think, it is definitely the big overarching premise, and you nailed it, is about being ready. So, what can we do to be prepared? Well, we take protective actions to be safe. We react in the right ways. That's really important, is learning how to, if a disaster is happening, if you're running around screaming and you're throwing things, like, I'm talking to the gentleman here, okay? If you're running around screaming, okay, it's about being patient, being calm. Now, you want to move quickly, but just throwing your hands up and having no idea what's going on, that's not going to end well for anybody. Adapting to tough challenges. knowing that if you go to a shelter, and we tell people this all the time, if you come to a Red Cross shelter, you sleep on a cot. We like only in really weird extenuating circumstances are we actually even able to use a hotel. So you'll sleep on a cot, you'll have 2 blankets given to you, one for a pillow, one to cover up. And it's not luxury, but it gets you out of the rain, or it gets you out of the cold, it gets you out of the heat, whatever it is. And then finally, when we are prepared, we can also recover quickly from difficulties. So, go there. So what does it mean to be Red Cross ready? Well, we look at 3 different things: get a kit, make a plan, and to be informed. So, get a kit. Pretty much your kit should contain supplies that you will need at home, or that can easily be transported if you have to evacuate. Making a plan, you need to identify the different steps you need to take for specific disasters. So like for tornadoes, you obviously don't want to go run outside. As much as we want to go take pictures, we don't want to run outside unless that's where your storm shelter is. Okay, if your storm shelter's outside, then go outside and get your storm shelter. If there's a fire, that's when you do want to run outside. And when you get outside, we're going to cover this, but I want to kind of give you a little brief tip. How long do you think you have to get out of your house? You ruined, less than 2 minutes, you got it. So back in the 70s, when, I don't know if it was Red Cross that was doing this, but the average that they were telling people was 15 minutes, 20 minutes. No, it's 20 minutes. For instance, making a plan. Let's say you're in a tornado, or you're driving down the street, and you're in a car, and there's a tornado. I get adults with this one all the time, because they since have changed it. This has come down from emergency management officials, FEMA, and all that jazz. Do you stay in your car, or do you get out of your car? If you're coming and all of a sudden a tornado's bearing down, you can't get away, what do you do? It used to be that, but then they have found that more people, when they're in a tornado, die from flying debris, as opposed to getting sucked out and land in Kansas. No. Basically, it creates like a wind tunnel, and then there you go. So the idea is that your best chance. Now, is it a great chance? Not really, but it's better than laying in a ditch. Is get in the car, you duck down like you did in grade school, put your head between your knees, and that offers the best protection from flying debris. Now, is it the best protection? No, a storm shelter obviously is, but just so you guys can be aware, that's something to make a plan about when you're going through life. Just if you know, you know. So, be informed. Finally, it's important that you are informed. Learn how you're going to get information. If all the power goes out and your phone dies, how are you going to get information? You have radios. You can do radios. Because yeah. Well, because if your power's out and you don't have your cell phone, many of us have smartphones now that actually have internet. But if that phone dies and you don't have a charger, you don't have a way to charge it, the only way you can really communicate is either if you have a walkie-talkie that's not dead, maybe you can pick up on the signal, but you're going to have a different way to communicate and get your information. So something to think about to help yourself and your household and your community. So get a kit. So we'll kind of go through this fairly quickly. Your household kit is supplies that you need for 3 days. 2 weeks is the better option, but the idea is that you have it for 3 days. And that's just for you. Think about your family members. So each family member would have to have a kit for themselves to last for 3 days. Go bag is kind of like a mobile version. You guys often hear that. They either call it a go bag or a rucksack. It's a supplies for 3 days in case you need to evacuate quickly. Supplies for each member of the household, and you want to customize for personal needs and disasters common to your area. So I want to go back through this a little bit. So in one kit, you want to put everything that you're going to need to stay sheltered in place for 3 days. Another kit, call it your go bag, and that's what you're going to need if you have to evacuate. If you have to evacuate, what are some things, just right off the top of your head, you think you're going to need? Water, yeah. So the essentials, food, water, are the two big ones, food and water. What else, though? Medication. Now, here's a question. What if your medication gets ruined in the process of evacuating? What should you have in your go bag or in your wallet or your purse? Boom. A list of medications. And even one step better is actually to have an already pre-written script from your pharmacist in your back pocket. They often say if you travel abroad, have that with you just in case something happens and you need to be able to give it to somebody, as opposed to trying to call back home, wake your pharmacist up. They can write the script, try and fax it over. It's a nightmare. So have a list of your scripts, and if you can get one from your pharmacist or from your doctor, even better. What else? What else do you think you should have in your either at home bag or your shelter bag? Boom, chargers, absolutely. What else? Batteries, yes, extra batteries. What if you get hurt? There you go. So what they recommend, I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quickly. They recommend a 7-day supply of medications, a copy of prescriptions, dosage, and treatment information, battery backup power, you guys got that one. A multi-purpose tool, that's a pretty good one. Sanitation and personal hygiene items, copies of personal documents such as birth certificates, social security card. And they say, well, why is that important? When Hurricane Harvey hit, I was working at a shelter down in Nacogdoches, Texas. We had about 100 residents come up from this little town that was right there on the coast. Everyone's home was completely flooded, like 5 feet underwater. Well, when they got up there, FEMA had already declared that's an emergency zone, and so they started trying to work with them. Nobody had their documentation as to prove where they lived. Some had a driver's license that actually had their actual address on it, but nobody could prove who they were or where they lived, and that actually is really essential for receiving federal help. So it's something to think about when you're putting your kit together, is make sure you have those copies of those items. Cell phone charger, you got that. Extra cash, because if the banks are closed, ATMs are closed, you want to make sure you have some extra cash. At least one emergency blanket, which you will be able to grab one of those on your way out tonight. And then a map of the area. Now, I know you all probably know this area fairly well, but if you have to evacuate, say, to where your other family members are across the states, do you have physical maps of those areas? Not Google. That's something you got to think about, because if you have no idea where you're going, Google's not working. Let's say the system goes down because the disaster hits where Google's located. How are you going to handle that? So have a physical map. Now it's quite a bit, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed by it. Again, take a little bit at a time, and just kind of start building your kit slowly, and eventually you will get there. So like we talked about, gather the essentials. You need food, water, you need medicine. With the food, make sure you keep it fresh. Check it at least twice a year to see expiration dates, because that stuff does go bad. She was dead on. It's 1 gallon per person per day. They would also recommend at least a half a gallon for sanitation purposes, because you can just simply fill the back of your toilet with half a gallon to be able to use it. Let's see. Keep it fresh. Customize your kit. So when you're thinking about your kit, you're thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about the loved ones that you have to take care of. So if you have loved ones that live with you that maybe are disabled, or they're elderly, what kind of medicines do they need? So that responsibility may fall to you as well. Pets or service animals. Now some of y'all are like, well, I don't really care. I can let my turtle die. I can tell you this, when I give the presentation to adults about if there's a fire, you're more important, get out of the house, leave your pets inside. Every adult looks at me like you're absolutely insane. Every kid looks at me like, okay, yeah, we can do that. The kids get it, but the adults, I've had adults like come up to me like, I'm never doing that. I'm like, well, okay, I mean, that's your choice, but if you are going to take your pet with you, make sure that you pack a good gallon-sized bag of dog food or cat food. Items that bring you comfort. So this is a really big one. So let's say because stress happens with disasters, and it affects everybody differently. So I would recommend, that you have some playing cards or a photo of like family, or maybe you have like a favorite like soundtrack that you listen to. Bring something that brings you some sort of comfort. If you have kids, make sure they have something for themselves that bring comfort for the kids. Not only that, but for kids especially, make sure that you strap it to their forehead, you duct tape it to their belly, a contact sheet, so that if they wander off in the middle of evacuating, they can say, oh yeah, look at my contact information. People think I'm joking, but kids wander off, and then it's like, well, who's your parents? Well, Jack. Or no, it's Dada. Okay, well, what does he look like? Well, he looks like that guy, and just a random person. So, but having that contact information that you can basically essentially attach to them, pin it to them, whatever you need to do, or give them a picture of their family. So if they go to a first responder, someone runs into them, they can say, "Oh, well, this is this kid's family. Now we know. Now we at least know who they kind of belong to." Just different stuff to begin thinking about as you're preparing. So this is kind of an interesting thing, a kit for everywhere. So you can have a kit for work. Again, you can think of it like a mini go bag for work. Include walking shoes, tornadoes. You do not want to be walking around after a tornado in flip-flops. Do not do that. That is just tetanus waiting to happen. Do not do that. So make sure you have some fresh walking shoes. Vehicles, food and water. Doesn't matter where you're traveling to, always have some sort of water with you. Especially, I have learned, if you're traveling out to the Panhandle in the summertime, there's a gas station, and then about 17 hours later, there's a city. So you need water, you need walking shoes, first aid supplies, something else to do. So just kind of a little preparedness tip. If your car breaks down, you're in the middle of nowhere. The first thing you should do is, what do you think? Put your flashers on. That's a good one. Yep. Okay. Yep. What if your phone is about to die? Yeah, hurry up and call for help. That's right. So, yes. So call for help, and if you, yes, boom, yes. So one thing you can do is exactly what you guys just hit on. Is one, call for help. So call AAA, call 911. But also, call, like, let's say you know that for a fact you're only like 10 miles from a gas station, and you decide, oh, I can hike there. Okay, call and leave a message, or change your voicemail that says, hey, this is, Susie, I'm heading down 412, I'm at mile marker 56, and I'm heading west, and I left at 10:36. So, just so they have an idea, okay, wait a minute, they left at this time, averaging about 2-3 miles an hour, might be where they're at. So that's definitely something you can kind of keep in the back of your head. Flares, jumper cables, and then seasonal supplies. If you're traveling during the wintertime for Christmas, always have a couple sleeping bags in your car, just in case. I mean, as we've seen, multiple accidents, multiple times winter storms hit really hard. Definitely have some sleeping bags. At the very least, they can keep you warm until the traffic clears out. All right, now we're going to get into making a plan. So different hazards require you to take different actions. So for instance, I mentioned tornado. Don't run outside unless your storm shelter's there. You want to get inside of an inside room, obviously with no windows. You don't want shards of glass in your face. You would like, if a house fire, get out, stay out. We'll talk more about that here in a second. For floods, know your roads. Know which roads flood. We have dealt so many times with people that's like, oh, I'll be fine, I can stay here. The second it starts raining, first emergency responders get a call, and they're like, hey, we can't get to you. Well, why not? Because the road's impassable. That's why we asked you to evacuate, 6 hours ago. So, know your roads, know where the areas that flood. If you're coordinating with other family members, and you know that their areas also flood, maybe have a third meeting location point that you guys can go to and know how to get there and know which roads are safe to travel. That's what we're talking about in terms of making a plan. You know the disaster, you know who's going to be going with you, you know what you're going to need, and you know necessarily how you should get there to be the safest possible. If your household member is in the military or they're away on business, make sure they know the plan of attack. So I think she was saying that she's got family down in Florida. That I imagine you guys have been communicating nonstop, so that if anything does happen, she's already aware of, hey, I know at least where they last were, what's going on. How can we get some help to them? Because sometimes the biggest advocates are family that are far away. I can tell you that Red Cross will get a lot of calls from people from Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas. Hey, is there anything that's going on down in Florida? Like, have you heard from my family members? We actually do have a reunification site that we do get going once we get more people in the shelters, so that people can keep track, especially if they lose track of their loved ones. So that's kind of something neat that we do as well. All right, so when making a plan, you want to make sure that you practice this disaster plan with your family members at least twice a year. It's a simple phone call. I would not recommend during Thanksgiving, because I don't want to break out into arguments, but call them during the summertime when disasters are least likely to happen. I would not call them if you're 2 days away from potential flooding. Don't do that. unless you've already worked it out and you're just, making preparations to leave. But make sure you practice that disaster plan. And as adults, I think we think we know, oh, this is what we're going to do. But really, truly, write it out. The more that you write stuff out, the more better your brain remembers it. So make sure that you have that list of, for instance, if you know anybody, your family members that are pregnant and they're fixing to potentially have a disaster, make sure they know a list of hospitals from where they're at to where you're at if they're coming towards you. So that if anything happens and she goes into labor, they know where to stop. We had a family member she was like literally a week away from giving birth, and they decided, well, we want to go down to Louisiana. Oh, okay. And so my sister-in-law, who's very medically minded, she's like, well, do you have a list of all the hospitals? And so as they started talking that through, they're like, you know what, maybe we won't go to Louisiana. Just because they started thinking through it, and they're like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. But if they have to evacuate, that's something you can do as a family member, is say, okay, here's a list of all the different hospitals, urgent cares, ERs, all that stuff. All right. When making a plan, you want to include the right details. How to evacuate, where to meet, how to communicate. Important records, we talked about that. Where you will stay. This is a pretty big one, because if your family members that you're communicating with are also out of power, probably don't necessarily want to stay there. This is where you need to communicate and say, okay, if all of us are experiencing some sort of disaster, whose house is better equipped for us to be at? Where's a backup plan? So if it's just you and your family here, then make a plan and say, okay, if we get a major snowstorm, do we know any family or cheap places down south that we can go to escape the heat or escape the winter storm? This is the things you need to think about and actually write down. Go ahead and get hotel names and numbers now, because again, if your power goes out and you lose your phone and you're trying to look stuff up, at least then you'll have the names and phone numbers of those places. Where you will stay, and if you shelter in place, make sure they know that as well, that that's what you're choosing to do. And of course, practice your plan. This is what I was talking about. For adults, you can carry this in your wallet. It's simple card that you can put in your wallet, you put in your purse. Memorize the emergency contacts. How many of you all still remember the phone numbers of your friends from when you were like 10 years old? Like 11, 12? How many of you guys had to remember them? I had to remember mine. I still remember 5 of them because I dialed them all the time. Now if you ask me, do you know, I know my wife's phone number, but I don't know my in-laws' numbers. Don't know them. I have to have them on my phone. So, memorize those emergency contacts and be good for your brain too. So, memorize them, have those cards on you at all times. Also, in case you ever get in a wreck while you're evacuating, first responders can look at that and be like, oh, okay, this is some of their contact information. All right. And then be informed. So this is the last little part of the Red Cross part of what we really trying to hammer home is how are you going to get your information? And so as you're going through this, identify how you're going to get it, understand weather alerts. You guys all know the difference between a watch and a warning. Okay? So watch means you get to go outside, look at all the wonderful ingredients happening. Warning means you get to get your camera out and get ready for it, right? No. So watches, all the ingredients are there for the tornado. Let's just use a tornado. Warning means it's been spotted. Get to safety. Also, follow instructions from authorities. They have a lot of information at their disposal. So if they come by your house and say, hey, listen, this is fixing to get really bad, you may want to evacuate, I'd listen to them. Granted, this is on you. It's America. It's a free country. But I would highly, highly, highly suggest you definitely follow instructions from the authorities. They are there to help you, there to, for your best interests. Know your neighbors. In Oklahoma, I moved here from Missouri, so I didn't realize that you can have neighbors that lived 4 miles down the road. All my neighbors were just right there. And so you guys, I think, know your neighbors probably better than most of the country, honestly. But know your neighbors, know what their plans are. If you can just get a brief, just have a brief conversation with them. Just know who they are. Know if you can, all of a sudden, a disaster hits, can I go on your property and set up shop there for a day or so? If they say yes, great. If they say no, well then go to the next neighbor, a couple miles down the road. Know what to do in traveling. So, and especially what not to do. So, obviously, if you're traveling, you want to make sure that you have enough gas. If you know you're going to be traveling a long distance, take gas with you because gas stations could be very well be closed. We saw that a lot with Hurricane Harvey. People driving up from Texas and Louisiana, they often ran out of gas because the gas stations were closed because they were driving down from Houston, and a lot of the gas stations all the way up because the refineries were flooded. So they closed them, and they're like, we can't make it the rest of the way. And so they were calling AAA in from way up north and driving down to give them gas, and it was a mess. So if you know you're going to be evacuated, know you're going to be traveling a great distance, make sure that you have extra fuel, or at the very least, you know a certain spot that you can stop and get extra fuel. Emotional health. We'll go over this real quick. After a disaster, disasters can be extremely stressful. So know the signs of stress, of feeling really stressed out. So what do you think the signs are of being really stressed? You guys should probably know some of these, because I imagine we've all been stressed once or twice. Crying, yes, that's a good one. What else? Anger, yep. I'll go through this list real quick. So feeling physically or mentally drained, having difficulty making decisions or focusing. You may have heard the term decision fatigue. Becoming easily frustrated, there's the anger one. Find yourself arguing with friends and family more than usual. Feeling sad, numb, lonely, or worried. And then experiencing changes in appetite or sleep patterns. All those are signs that your body is at its mental end. Now, you can deal with stress by doing the following. So be sure you and your loved ones are safe. That's kind of a no-brainer. Eat healthy foods and drink plenty of water. That's usually actually one very much overlooked. I got that one. Get rest the best you can. Stay connected with family and friends. Talk with people. That helps a lot. Be patient with yourself and those around you. This is kind of going back to what we talked about, being adaptable and being flexible. The old Bible verse from 2 Hezekiah, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. I know, it's a joke. There's no 2 Hezekiah, in case you're wondering. So, be patient with yourself and those around you. Set priorities and break down tasks into smaller ones. Now, may seem kind of like, okay, that's kind of weird. We worked with a guy once who had a house fire, and when we got to the scene, he was curled up in the fetal position and just crying his eyes out. He's like, I have no idea what to do. And he was just basically rocking back and forth. And so our responder, just thinking on his feet, he's like, okay, well, let's focus on one thing. He's like, do you have insurance? And he's like, well, yeah, I have insurance. And he's like, okay, what's your insurance guy's or gal's name? Oh, it's Susie, okay? What's Susie's phone number? And so as he just asked these very simple, pointed questions, the guy stopped rocking, he started thinking, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to be right here with you. Let's call Susie together. I can be your voice to kind of let her know what's going on. And so in that moment, making those small decisions kind of gave him a sense of control, because a lot of times during disasters, people don't feel like they have any control over anything that's going on. So it's really important that you kind of set a priority of like, okay, I'm going to at least focus on this. I'm going to keep my kids safe. I'm going to make sure they get a meal. That's my priority right now, is make sure they're fed. Something like that. Gather information about help and resources so that you have it ahead of time. And then stay positive. I don't know if you guys ever saw, there was a video, bless this guy's heart, he probably got sick after this, but during Hurricane Harvey, there's mass flooding everywhere. And there's a video of a guy, and a neighbor is videoing this. The guy is running through this flooded street, it's about halfway up his thighs, and he's got a plunger in his hand, and he's like, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And he stops in the middle of the street and starts going like this in the middle of the street. It was hilarious, but he was doing it as a way to break the tension from all the neighbors, because everyone's house was starting to be flooded, and so he wanted to bring some levity to it. And now, granted, the water that he was in was absolutely filthy and disgusting and terrible. Don't ever wade through flooded water like that. It's absolutely nasty. Remember, there's sewage, there's gas, there's oil, everything in that water if something's flooded. So, finally, helping children cope. This is a big one. Just think of all the things that I just talked about for adults, but just magnify it by about 3,000. And that's what can happen with kids. And just remember, kids don't necessarily know how to voice what's going on, so please be extra patient with them. You can help them build confidence before disasters by going over the plan with them. You can also be supportive after the disasters simply by being there, because kids, if they're angry, they cry. If they're happy, sometimes they cry. If they're frustrated, they cry. So just being there and being patient for them. Just because keep in mind, we've had kids for home fires, they've seen their relatives die. They've seen their moms and dads be wheeled out on stretchers, not knowing if they're going to live or not. So all this stuff, when they see in the mind of a child, those are the moments that we need adults to be adults and to put aside our frustrations the best that we can and just simply be there for them. So, other than that, tools, carry emergency contact cards with you. We do have a Red Cross Safe and Well website. I'm going to kind of go through these. You've gone through the disaster kit. We're going to give you the supplies here in a second. And home fires, I'm going to tell you the 4 things I teach the kids, just for the sake of time, because I want to tell you about our opportunities. So once there's a fire, you have less than 2 minutes to get out. You nailed it. Once you are out, stay out. There was a story of a guy that he ran back inside because he wanted to save his precious guitar. Well, his wife, and his 2 daughters got out just fine. He ran back inside to get his guitar. It's a 2-story building. Next thing you know, you see him jumping out the 2nd-story window. He breaks his leg, and the wife's yelling at him like, "Why don't you go back in there, Bo?" Well, next thing they realize is that baby girl is gone. She ran back into the house because daddy did, and she died in the fire. So, adults, your kids will watch you, so once you are out, stay out. Number 3, have a meeting place. So when you're out, make sure that you all know if there's a fire, we get out, make sure you know exactly where you're supposed to meet. Is it the house across the street? Is it the big tree down the lane? Whatever it is, this is where we're meeting. So once you're out, stay out, and then you have less than 2 minutes to get out, have a meeting place. And number 4, obviously, is call 911. When I teach this to kids, I'm like, what do you think the number 1 rule is? Stop, drop, and roll. Well, that's if you're on fire. But if a fire does happen, you want to get out as quickly as possible. How many of y'all have grandkids? Okay? Do they sleep in the room by themselves? Do you think they know how to bust through a screen if there's a fire and parents can't get to them? Yeah. But no, I was teaching my kids this. My kid was like 4 at the time. Next thing I know, he's in his room with his hammer trying to hit through the window. I'm like, no, not right now. But I was like, I'm kind of proud of you, but at the same time, don't break the screen yet. But that's something to think about is, does everybody know 2 ways to get out of every room? That's the big thing that we say is 2 ways out of every room. And if you have little ones, do they know what to do? If they can't get out or mom and dad can't get to them, stuff things by the door so they can't, so the smoke can't get in. You open up the windows, and then the idea is that it gives them time. Oh, for instance, when you fall asleep at night, are your doors open or closed in the house? Bam, closed, exactly. Fires will spread, I can't remember the statistic. It is ridiculously amount faster than if they're open, or than if they're closed, sorry. If the doors are open at night, the fire can spread so much faster than if your doors are closed. So keep them closed. And the smoke as well. Yep. So, real quick, Pastor Len and me wanted to talk about different volunteering opportunities, which we can easily do, and go through this. Just in case you're wondering if house fires are really bad, every 7 seconds in the United States, a house fire happens, and every 7 minutes, somebody dies from a house fire across the United States. If you have smoke alarms, awesome, test them. If they've been up there for about 6 years, or you've decided to paint over them for whatever reason, they are no longer good, get rid of them. Red Cross will come by your house and we will install free smoke alarms, free, in your homes. They will last 10 years. If for whatever reason our alarms start beeping at you, it's because it's malfunctioned. Throw it away, call us, we'll come back out and replace it. And we actually have a form down there. If you would like that service, I just need your name, phone number, and address, and we'll get in contact with you and we'll do that for you. Other than that, that's the basic preparedness thing. To talk about what Pastor Lanny said, we have a number of different ways for people to volunteer. Prepare children, yeah, all this stuff. Okay. I covered the basics of that. So, number of different ways you can volunteer. So every day we respond to house fires. So we are responding down to Hurricane Ian right now. We respond locally all the time. Whenever there's a house fire, Charles Lewis is another Boy Scout troop leader. He's one of our volunteers. So if there's a fire, Carrie Cox, the emergency manager, will give us a call. We will go by and we will respond. And what we do is we provide a comfort kit. We can provide a blanket during the winter. We also provide financial services. We provide a certain amount of money based on how many people live there. And that money is meant to be used for basically their immediate needs. We want shelter, so you need to go get a hotel, go get a hotel. If you're out there in your underwear, because that's all you had on when the fire happened, you can have somebody go buy you some clothes. If you need food, it's to help you get food. So that's something that you can do as a volunteer. It's not a huge lift because thankfully in Bartlesville we don't see a whole lot of fires. Maybe about 1, 2, 3 a month, maybe. But we're always looking for people that are willing at 2 o'clock in the morning to go out and do that. And I will tell you, it is a really great moment. It's a really great mission moment. I've worked with a lot of churches. I tell them, wear your shirts. You're going to have to wear a Red Cross vest, but wear a shirt that says who you're with. It's a great way to show people that people from town and country care about them when they're in the worst moments of their life. Obviously, you'll see on the TV coming up, there are multiple different ways you can deploy and go down during a big disaster. Typically, the very first wave is for those really seasoned responders who have done this for years and years, but we also send newbies as well because we want them to get the experiences in helping. You can volunteer with our Services to the Armed Forces Department. You can make calls to family members of deployed members of the service. You can volunteer with our biomedical side. You can deliver blood and blood products to places. You can volunteer. If you have a certain passion, chances are I can help you find an area that you like to volunteer. The only restriction that we have is you have to be 18 years or older. So, she's going too dark. But we would love to have you as a volunteer, and I know Pastor Lanny has talked about wanting to be out more involved in the community, and so if you are interested in talking more, I'll stay behind for a little bit. I can answer all your questions. Feel free to come up. The first form on the table, you don't have to fill that out, but if you would like a free smoke alarm, like us to come by and do that, please feel free to fill that out and then leave that with me. Everything else you can take one of. You can take a pen, the forms, and you can take a hand sanitizer stick, the emergency blanket, and some tissues. So other than that, that's it. That's what I've got for you.
Hey, y'all tell Matt, thank you very much for all. We, the backstory on this is they called us and says, y'all are a disaster recovery site. And I was like, okay. And what they needed was a space to have a meeting. And they said, we know you've got the gym. Can we borrow your space to have this meeting? And I was like, sure, come on over. So they came over and had some guests and they had their meeting. And we just got to talking about things and opportunities. And the thing that's been in my mind ever since we became a facility was, we're a facility and I don't know what to do. If they call us and say, we're activating you, I didn't know what to do. Well, the good news is they basically come in. All we have to do is have the walls up. And so that's really cool. However, there are so many more other things that we can do. And as most volunteer organizations, they're always looking for folks who are willing to help. So if something you heard tonight kind of catches your eye, or if there's something that you love to do, like you said, if you get a chance, talk to Matt about it. He and I, as we've had 2 or 3 meetings, one of the things I'd love to see us do better and better all the time is reach out to our community in some form or fashion. And if we do that by partnering with people, that's cool too. And like you said, if you one of the things that really caught my attention and that I'm going to do a lot of thinking about is this smoke alarm thing. I mean, people need those, and wouldn't it be cool if a couple of guys or a couple of girls, if you want, ladies, with Town and Country shirts on, went by, knock, 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 hey, we've got your smoke alarm. We'd like to come in and put that up. And that's Town and Country out there in the community. That's a cool thing. So it's something to think about, pray about. I've got Matt's contact information. If you don't get questions answered tonight or something comes up later, we'll get you in touch with them. So thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for being a part of this. Back to our regular schedule next Wednesday night. And Jeremy's going to pray us out tonight.
Let's pray. Father God, I just want to thank you so much for Matt and the Red Cross and for all the work they do for our community and for our country and just wherever disaster strikes. And Lord, I just pray over our congregation here and that we can be a blessing to in times of crisis and be a blessing to your community. And Lord, just go with us as we carry on and help us to be prepared and willing to serve you in whatever capacity that is. In Jesus' name, amen.